Connecticut is famous for two things: its wealth and its ghosts. The roster of haunted spots situated in Connecticut is quite lengthy. It is said to be the oldest city in America since the first colonists settled in Connecticut. Also, America's first witch trials and executions happened there too. And this was long before the execution of alleged witches in Salem and Massachusetts, which is well documented. Stay with us till the end as we show you some of the most horrific places in Connecticut. So without any further delay, let's go bust some ghosts. Number 10. Sawmill City Road, Connecticut. This entire road becomes haunted only at night. However, during the day, this road provides quite a sight. At ungodly hours, reports suggest sightings of orbs, screaming voices, and shadowy figures moving from tree to tree. This road is also the native home of the Melonheads, who are supposed to be inbred cannibalistic monsters. Number 9. Dunellen Hall, Greenwich, Connecticut. Our next location on this list is categorically the most cursed place in Connecticut. However, some argue that it is not necessarily one of the most haunted places in the state. According to them, being cursed and haunted are not the same. We think it's only a gimmick to sell tickets. It is quite like the tomato pronunciation debate. Indeed, a cursed location also amounts to a haunted location. Dunellen Hall was built in 1926 on 26 acres of land close to Round Hill Road. Townsfolk say it has always had an unhappy history, and it all started when the first ever family to occupy the building moved out. Since then, subsequent owners have fallen into financial ruin and died prematurely. We understand that most ghost stories are like that, where the ghosts in question maintain a pall on their immediate surroundings, which is a classic definition of being a haunted place. A businesswoman named Leona Helmsley was the most recent victim. She was nicknamed the Queen of Mean, but unfortunately for her, leasing the house in 1983 became her comeuppance. She was soon arrested for tax evasion. She returned to the house upon her release to live out her last days. She ultimately died there, and in doing so joined the long list of corporate-type victims that might still haunt that house today. So essentially, if you are seeking investment advice, you can go over to the house with your ghost detecting instruments. Don't worry, you'd be fine if you don't give in to the temptation to settle there semi-permanently. Number 8. Bush Holly House, Connecticut. Anya Sitton, a local author, has a real-life ghost story to tell. She insists that the ghost of a slave girl lives in the old Bush Holly House property. Now, here's a little background to why she thinks that way. Before slavery was abolished in Connecticut, slaves lived in the attic of the Bush Holly House. A fictional wax scene of how they lived has even been recreated at the local modern museum. However, Miss Sitton, who is at best an amateur ghost chaser like most Connecticutans, has explained that the same young girl probably died of a contagious disease. According to her, if you listen hard enough, you can even hear her occasionally screaming in pain. Number 7. The Bruce Museum, Connecticut. This is one more story about how unlucky the Irish get. Two young lovers worked as helping hands at the Belhaven Mansions in the late 1800s. Obviously, they were in love, or this story would be meaningless. The area around the museum was their secret spot, where the boy used to play his flute, and the girl would listen with rapt attention. They both planned to get married once things got better. Sadly enough, the boy disappeared mysteriously. Leaving his betrothed feeling jilted, she moved back to Ireland, and as her luck would have it, she got infected by the consumption, another name for tuberculosis. In the 1900s, locals started reporting sightings of these same lovers, as they must have been a few decades earlier. Mind you, this is an entire generation after they first romanced around the area. First, the apparitions would profess their love for each other. He would play his flute, and she would listen. Then they would hear a strange ghostly voice inviting them inside at some point, but they would resist it. Later, they would disappear. Nowadays, the museum site takes an hour to visit, and maybe they might end up catching the sighting of their favorite ghostly couple doing their thing. Number 6. Palace and Majestic Theaters, Connecticut. These theaters simply represent a double whammy of empty theaters in downtown Connecticut. According to the legend, both theaters were the operating base for the infamous Dutch Schultz and his bootlegger gang. It is claimed that he sometimes ordered his goons to kill people in the building, hence the incidence of ghost sightings there. Number 5. Bruce Park, Connecticut. A ghost was sighted here in 1996. It had a female body and a head with snakes for its hair. It kind of reminds me of Medusa. It was a group of teenagers who were unfortunate enough to see her firsthand. They had been drinking beer and making quite the scene in one of the park's picnic spots. They were so loud that the ghost had to do something about it on its own. To be fair, it may have been a prankster, and the boys were too drunk to tell the difference. On the other side, anything is possible in Connecticut, where you could meet a ghost walking down the street under the right conditions. As for the boys, they quickly got into their transport and skedaddled out of there. Number 4. Homestead in Connecticut. It is one of the hotels in the Greenwich, Connecticut area. It has a ship's figurehead installed on its porch. It is of a woman in a white robe and a hoop skirt, with rosy cheeks and black eyes. At the time, the ship head became damaged, so the sailors left it on shore for repair, but set sail before they could reinstall it. Unfortunately, the Lady Lancashire, their ship sank on the high sea and never returned, so the figurehead was gifted to the innkeeper. During the subsequent years, guests at the inn have complained about hearing strange noises in the night and spotting unfamiliar guests now and then. We guess the lady, or what's left of her, misses her sailor friends at the bottom of the ocean. Number 3. Autobahn, Greenwich, Connecticut. Autobahn, Greenwich is the location of a famous cautionary tale about ghosts that has made the rounds since the 1990s. It all happened to a girl at the intersection of two roads there while she was going back home. It was getting late, so she decided to take a shortcut up the hill. After a while, she thought she heard footsteps following her. She stopped, and all of a sudden, the mysterious steps stopped too. When she continued walking, they continued too. She repeated this test to prove that she wasn't going crazy. She even tried that classic line, "Who's there?" and heard the steps again, quickly approaching her. This was then she decided to run for her dear life. So if peradventure you're visiting Autobahn, please don't stay out late. Number 2. Fairfield Hills State Hospital, Connecticut. This same hospital once housed the criminally insane. It was open for business in 1931, but it was also shut down in 1995. The standard treatments for criminals from back then would be considered inhumane in our day. Just imagine all the craziness in one place. That type of environment could unimaginably produce the worst types of ghosts. The old building have since been shut off to the public, and the surrounding areas have been transformed into pleasant spaces. And finally, number 1. Union Cemetery, Easton, Connecticut. Graveyards and cemeteries are classical haunting grounds if you believe the hype, and you should. The aforementioned cemetery even has its resident ghost. She is called the White Lady. She has dark hair and spots a nightgown and bonnet. Like her, most persistent ghosts, more often than not, want something, and by now, you'd think some ghost expert has figured her out. The truth is, no one knows who she is or what she wants, but you can trust that there is no shortage of opinions. Here are a few good ones. She's a cemetery hopper seeking out her infant son who died during childbirth. Or maybe she is the ghost of a woman murdered in the 1940s. Or even worse, she's the mother of the woman murdered in the 1940s. One motorist even claimed to have run her over and lived to tell the tale. There are more angles to this mystery. This time it's a ghost called Red Eyes. It looks on from the bushes at any cemetery invaders. Locals say it may be the ghost of one Early Kellogg, who was set on fire in the adjoining streets as far back as 1935. So that's a wrap on this video. Hope you liked it. And do let us know in the comments which of these stories made your bones chill. Hit the like button and the bell icon after subscribing for some more amazing content like this.